When I think about my journey to the cross, I'm reminded about the poem, Footprints in the Sand. For those of you who may not be familiar, it's a poem about a man who had a dream that he was talking to God. Looking back at his life, he saw footprints in the sand along a beach. Sometimes there were 2 sets, other times only 1. When the man asked God about this, God replied, when the man saw only 1 set of footprints is when God had carried him through. I grew up mostly unchurched, and when I look back, I see, for the most part, only 1 set of footprints. I was baptized as an infant, as are many people, and my parents started us out going to church. I have fond memories of Sunday school, like the time we were learning about the types of foods they ate in Jesus' day. The teacher brought in figs and dates and flatbread, which for all I knew was just a giant cracker. She taught me the things we all learned in Sunday school, and I enjoyed that. This is where I see 2 sets of footprints when I look back. Well, we eventually stopped going to church, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I learned they'd gotten a new pastor and my folks didn't care for him. That's why we quit going. My parents never told us that we couldn't go to church ourselves, though, but I never really made the effort. I see 1 set of footprints fading here. But God wouldn't leave me alone. Or, more precisely, God wouldn't leave me on my own. In junior high school, I met my first girlfriend. And guess what? She asked me to go to church with her. So I went to her church for as long as the relationship lasted. Probably about a semester. 2 sets of footprints again. Well, summer came, and there were more interesting things than girls. So again, I stopped going to church. 1 set of footprints along my journey. Again. I'm going to fast forward here. Many of you know that I spent 25 years in the emergency medical service driving an ambulance. And here again, God would not leave me on my own. After I finished my probation and got my first station assignment, my first partner was a PK, a preacher's kid. He didn't push religion on me or anyone else. But I remember we would watch the 700 Club on the TV at station. I worked with Darryl for about 2 years before I changed stations. My second partner was also a very devout Christian. Art Weatherford is his name. Art was divorced when we were first assigned together. He was still a good Christian, and eventually he met a nurse who he began dating. And you'll never guess what? She was a PK too. Although they were never overbearing, it seemed they were bound and determined to make sure that I knew about Jesus. Enough so that Art gave me a Bible with my name engraved on the cover as a Christmas present one year. So I attended church with them a few times, off and on, but I wasn't really into the whole church thing. Art and I worked together for probably 7 years or so before I moved on. These are just some of the people who left their footprints in my journey, along with the ones that are always there. Still, in my journey, there's only 1 set of footprints. Even though I wasn't going to church, I still felt there was something out there. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Because when things were going well, I would forget that I had God to thank for that. When things were not going well, however, I would ask God to make them better. Kind of one-sided, don't you think? Even so, God was watching out for me. Like the time I was young, dumb, and what we used to call full of the immortality of youth. I was riding my motorcycle a little too fast around a curve and hitting a patch of loose gravel. I skidded off the side of the road and over an embankment, landing in a water retention area. Fortunately, it was dry, and I came out of it with nothing more than a severely sprained ankle, a scrape on my shin, and a healthy respect for loose gravel. Returning to the scene a few days later, I saw there was about a 3-foot-high angle iron fence designed to keep debris out of the runoff area. Not only did I clear the fence, but I landed softly in the tall grass on the other side of the branches and gravel held back by the fence. I'm pretty sure it was God's hand that lifted me over that fence. I guess I'm lucky he didn't give me a head slap too. But God works in mysterious ways. My true journey began about 15 years ago. My brother and his family were going through a particularly difficult time, so I moved into their house to help out. And even though they're Catholic, but we won't hold that against them, they asked me to bring my nephew Kieran to Sunday school here. The reason being, Shannon and Steve Hayes are good friends of theirs, And Derek, being a year older than Kieran, Shannon was teaching Sunday school. Myrna felt Kieran would feel better if he knew the Sunday school teacher. So she asked me if I would mind bringing him to Northlake for Sunday school. At first, I would come for coffee hour, leave Kieran with Shannon, and go to Tully's for about an hour or so. This is back when we had the adult education hour in the fellowship hall. And from time to time, I'd hear some interesting discussions, but I didn't usually stay. Finally, someone asked me to sit in on a class. His name was Guy Hain. These classes raised some interesting questions, and eventually I decided to come to church and see if I could learn the answers. The first time I came in, looking rather lost and probably scared, I met Olaf Grannon. He could see I was tentative, but he came right over, shook my hand, welcomed me, and invited me in. Both Guy and Olaf were called home too soon, but their footprints are along my journey as well. As a matter of fact, everybody in this room has left their footprints in my life. Now, how do I put this delicately? The footprints that have had the biggest impression along my journey belong to Lucy Kay. Most of you know we met here at Northlake, and we got married here too. Now when I look at my journey through life, I see two sets of footprints. I'm sure there will be times ahead when things will be difficult, and there will be trials. But I know there will be at least one set of footprints I can always count on being there, even if I can't see mine. I think this verse from Psalms sums it all up. This is from Psalm 28, verses 7 through 9. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and I am helped. My heart leaps for joy, and I will give thanks to him in song. The Lord is the strength of his people, a fortress of salvation for his anointed one. Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever. Thank you for letting me share my story.